A healthy degree of skepticism would make one think, if trading is so profitable, why doesn't everyone do it? And for those people that do try, why is the percentage that fail to make it there so high? I'm B. James, I'm the day trading dad, and in this video, I'm going to break down 9 reasons why and share what I believe to be the truth of the matter after being a full-time trader for 3 years now. So what this means for you is that I hope you learn some of the things here and get some clear expectations that I had wrong in the first year or two of my trading journey that caused me immense stress and frustration, so that you don't give up prematurely. Now, I'm not an expert. I certainly haven't been in the market for 10 plus years and taken massive 6-figure, 5-figure payouts. But this year, I have found real consistency in the markets. And I have my story to share and offer for those who I am ahead of. All right, and what might surprise you is I actually have previous experience in a different get-rich-quick industry, online courses. And what happened there was wildly paralleling with a lot of the day trading industry. Now, the short version of it is that in 2018, I heard that people were making like $1 bajillion online selling courses, right? The gurus framed it as simply get 100 leads, run a webinar, sell a course, and you'll be rich quick. Well, I fell for it. And at the time, I was building a homestead in the woods, starting with raw land, clearing it, building our house by hand, building gardens, animal infrastructure, and so on. And my business at the time was helping others around me do the same. So when I heard you could get rich quick selling courses, do you know what I decided to do? Now, I dedicated every spare moment of my time to building a social media presence, an online course, and an email list. And all of that after 6 months of grueling work and spending $5,000 in Facebook ads, I decided that I was ready to launch my course to my email list. It completely flopped. Crickets. I mean, it was a major disappointment. So I reworked it and launched it again 2 months later. Another flop, another failure, more money and time lost. Now, I'm both ignorant at times and hardworking. So what did I decide to do next? Well, I spent the next 6 months building a different program and launched it, of course. And you guess it, that third course flopped too. Now, it was defeating. I was feeling like a failure and I was embarrassed to face my family. And I'm sure many would have called it quits before this, but not me. See, I gathered myself and I launched yet another course 6 months later, a full self-sustainability program helping people to design their own personal homesteads with my tools. And to my surprise, it started getting results. People started enrolling and people started telling me how this program was changing their lives. And some people went from eating McDonald's to growing their own food and teaching their kids what real nutrition was, and even finally finding happiness and fulfillment close to the land in a world that promotes disconnection and discontent. That was a huge W for me. Well, 2 years later, I had made multiple 7 figures, living out my dream of helping people live healthy, sustainable lives off their own land. And this story, this experience leads me directly into my first point that most people misunderstand about trading. It will likely take you way longer and be way harder than you anticipate or any of the gurus want to tell you. And while that might be kind of deflating to hear at first, if we can just reset the expectations a little bit, right? I think it'll change the game for a lot of traders. Now, in my mind, when it came to trading, I figured, yeah, give me a year, I'll figure it out. I'll be turning a profit. You know, I'm a smart guy. I'm driven. I got lots of time. And I was so wrong. You know, I got to that 1 year mark and I thought, okay, by a year and a half, I'll be sure turning a profit. And the same thing, wasn't turning a profit a year and a half in. And that pattern just repeated. And ultimately, I'm now at just about 3 years in. I'm finally finding consistency. I'm finally growing accounts, okay? It took me way longer than I thought. And in hindsight, I caused myself so much stress because of this. You know, I would reach that year and a half mark where my personal expectation was I should be doing better than this. And it stressed me out. It caused me to doubt myself. It caused me to mess up my own trading. It caused me to delay my own trading success. Now, real quick, if you're tired of the Lambo flaunting gurus online, hit the like for me, hit the subscribe, so that way the algorithm can actually push this content out to people who really need it. Thanks. And if just in hindsight, if I would have known it's going to take me 3 years, I could have relaxed, I could have let go, I could have enjoyed the process a lot more. You see, the mistake that people make is they rush the process, and understandably so. Like the gurus say, you just got to find a trading model, learn to read some charts, get an account, and you're going to be turning a profit. That's not true. And of course, everyone has their own spectrum. It's always going to take way longer and be way harder than you think. But don't quit. Don't give up. Just allow some breathing room, double or triple your expectations, and you're going to like the chances of you succeeding in getting there by simply changing your expectations are drastically improved. All right, number 2. Now, these are in no particular order. I'm just kind of running through my thoughts. Number 2 is bad and mixed information. I think that this really does mess up traders a lot. It really delayed my progress in the very beginning here. And what I mean by this is some of the information online is bad. It just isn't good. Or it's misapplied or misinterpreted. Like sometimes you can't learn something like a YouTube video that teaches you a little technique, but there's so much to the context of that trading technique that it doesn't work, okay? Additionally, a bunch of mixed information, and this is one of the things I did at first that caused me to struggle a lot as a trader. You mix things. You maybe follow, you're getting the feel for things. Who do you want to pay attention to? Who's real in this trading space? Who's legit? Who's not? So maybe you're following a handful of traders and you start mixing a bunch of different things. I've found that doesn't work. For me, I started to find much more success when I honed in on one mentor. So that meant that I had to find one mentor who I trusted, who I believed was profitable, and ignored everything else. And how I validated that mentor was profitable was, a lot of people don't necessarily share their P&Ls, or the P&Ls or broker statements can be manipulated, is a pretty sad thing in the trading space. But in the case of this mentor, I joined their Discord, so I kind of had to put the risk on up front. Minor risk, obviously. Discords are not terribly expensive. Put the risk on up front, and then I watched them. And they did a live stream every day, and I was able to trade with them, and I kept track of their trades. And I compared it to what they reported at the end of the month in their Discord and their P&L, and it matched up. So my experience was validating that my mentor was a profitable trader. And once I figured that out, I ignored everything. And if he didn't do it, I didn't incorporate it into the system. I only learned what he taught. So yes, by all means, float around on YouTube, find some people you like, but ultimately find a mentor that can teach you and pay for it. Like, it's going to cost you some money. You're going to run through a few different Discords or a few different mentors, but the likelihood of success figuring this out on your own by hodgepodging information together on YouTube or other, paid for courses is a lot less likely than finding a mentor and live trading with them. Real quick question for you. Are any of these landing home? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear if there's anything I'm missing in this list. All right, third, and this is one of the not so sexy ones that I feel like people don't want to hear, but it's one of the biggest levers that you can pull. And that's switching from focusing on profits to process. In other words, put the process over the profits. And I want to give you some comparisons here. I think sometimes trading can be approached a little bit as a business, right? Or a get-rich-quick scheme. We just take trades and you can either instantly make money or not make money. Like your first trade that you ever put on could be a winner and you could make money. And so we tend to focus on the profits, and understandably, right? Like we're humans, we're greedy. And in some instances that works, like the idea of business, that works. You can start a business doing vending machines or junk hauling, and you're solving a simple problem that people want to pay for, and you can focus on the profits, right? The profits equal a direct reflection very quickly, very easily of your business and your business skills. Trading is not like that. And it is ubiquitous across the space that people are focused on the wrong things, P&L and win rate and all that other stuff. When in reality, trading is a lot more like performance athletics, okay? Now, think of it if you just decided that, I'm going to become a professional kickboxer, or I'm going to join the NFL next week and win a Super Bowl and make millions. Like, I say that and it sounds crazy, right? Well, relate that to trading. Do you really think that you're just going to roll into these charts, learn how to read a completely different language, learn a model, learn the context around all of that and the nuances that are almost indescribable when it comes to trading, and just turn a profit? No. And in the case of performance athletics, right? Those people train for years and years and years, and they obsess over it. night and day. It's the thing that they do, right? They live, breathe, eat that sport. Trading is very similar. It's like a performance athletic. I think that this analogy doesn't get used enough because for me, it creates a lot of clarity as to like expectations. And the expectations, as I was talking about earlier, are everything. If we expect to turn a profit really quickly in trading like a business, you're going to screw yourself. But if you think about it in the context of performance athletics, you then understand I need to work on my performance. I need to work on it over time. It's not going to be quick and it's going to take time. And the moment you switch to process over profits, I found that everything changes. Trading becomes easier, less stressful, a lot funner, and the results start to compound much, much quicker. All right, number 4, trading is simple but not easy. Let me explain. Like at face value, that's a simple sentence, and you can probably interpret it on a logical level. But what exactly does it mean? Well, practically, the concept doesn't take much, right? You need to learn how to read a chart, get a model, get an account, take some trades, and that's it. Like I can explain it in, my 5 fingers what to do in trading. It makes it simple. But the fact that it is not easy layers into that. There's so many nuances. And the easy relates to what I was just talking about because it's more similar to performance athletics, right? You can describe a sport as very simple too. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to execute it well at all at first or in your first few years. And what this relates to, again, is expectations. Because I had the expectations at first that it was going to be easy. And that expectation really messed me up. It cost me a lot of time, cost me a lot of stress, cost me a lot of discouragement. There's periods of time where I would get discouraged and kind of back away from it and be like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how to figure this out. But it was all pressure that I built onto myself, thinking it was easy and it should be quick. And if I just would have stepped back and would have realized that this is not an easy thing to endeavor to take on, then all of a sudden it would have been much easier. Does that make sense? That by recognizing how it's not easy, you allow yourself to have more time to work on it. You allow yourself the understanding that you shouldn't get it right away, that it might take hundreds and hundreds of reps. It might take several attempts. And so I want you to think about that. Just close your eyes for a quick second and say, if I let go of the expectation that it's easy and that I'm not getting it and I'm not as good as everyone else, and also that it's going to take longer than I really think it will, let that sink in. How does that feel? Do you feel relief? Do you feel a little bit more like you can do this? I hope so. All right. Number 5 is that one model, one market only. Okay. And I get at the very beginning, you might have to find what market you're going to be working in and what model you want to play with. Now, in my experience, I started in crypto and I was pretty hard-headed about staying in crypto. And that costed me probably a year of time because the crypto market sucks. And eventually I listened to one of my mentors and I came over to the futures, specifically NQ. It's more the gentleman's market and it's much easier to trade. And that helped out. Now, that said, once I found the market, I only changed models essentially 2 times. I had a first model that I initially worked with that didn't work. I had to prove that for myself. And then I came across from my other mentor, the one I told you about earlier, who I was verified profitable. He had a model and I took it on because I knew it worked. And once I had those 2 things, I stopped. I've seen this problem time and time again with some of my trading peers that have started in the similar mentorships with me and we're still friends to this day. I notice people can bounce around doing things. And I have found that more consistency and stability in perfecting one model and one market only, because in the end, what I've discovered is the issues weren't really the model or it wasn't really the market. The issues, the gap between kind of knowing what you're doing on the charts and finding consistent profitability, that gap was actually everything to do with me. It was behavioral variances. It was lack of understanding of the model and all the details, because a model is just a model. There are A+ ones, there's B- ones. Do you know when it's an A+ one, right? And there's market context for that model. In other words, you can have an A+ model in, D grade market conditions, it's not going to win. And so I discovered that when you establish one model in one market and you stick to it for a really long time and not changing it, you're going to uncover everything that's actually holding you back in trading. And in my experience, that was everything on my end. 6, trading is an emotional and mind game. Now, obviously that's relatively obvious, but what do I mean by that? What's the significance of this statement when it comes to why trading is harder than you think it is, or why it takes longer, or why so many fail, or why people don't make the money that they think they're going to make in trading? This is because everyone wants to focus on the more tangible things, the model, the candlesticks. And yes, that is very important. I just spoke about that, obviously. But once you have an understanding of that, it's kind of like English, like learning a language. Once you know to speak English, like you're pretty proficient. And not that I couldn't improve in my English, but I'm doing just fine in life with my English as it is. And similarly, like when it comes to reading the markets, you come to a proficiency level with your market, your model, like you know what's going on. And the reality is, so many traders get to that level. I know a ton of them that can read the markets, they know their model, but they aren't consistent and they aren't turning a profit. And that is because it's an emotional and mind game. Okay? And that is the unseen stuff that's hard to identify. It's the stuff that we are also not taught in modern society to pay attention to, especially if we're, for men, we aren't taught to really address, understand, manage, and solve our emotional issues, right? And that's unfortunate. I've spoken about this in my other videos where I can relate this to imagine, a relationship with your wife, your spouse. If there's poor communication, poor emotional recognition, there's going to be breakdowns in the relationship, and you're going to have a poor relationship. It could end in divorce, like not good, right? Why do 50% plus of marriages end in divorce? This is the reason why. There's no communication. There's no understanding of what's going on in the mind, right? Why are you mad at your wife? Why is your wife mad at you? Can you articulate it? What's your contribution to that problem? Trading is very similar, okay? And even on these little micro levels that we might not recognize. And I'll give you an example. Say you take 3 losses in a row, and that's totally typical within most trading systems, according to the statistics, right? On that 4th trade, maybe what you decide to do is you get in the trade and you decide to go break even early because you're like, I'm going to be responsible. I've taken 3 losses already. I'm going to preserve capital. That's what I should be doing. But that little micro decision based out of just a little bit of fear or doubt can influence the outcome. And of course, as I'm sure you've experienced, that's the trade that taps you out at break even and then runs to your target like 2 minutes later. And it causes a lot of upset. That was a behavioral variance caused by a small emotional moment. And those are the things that really are in the gap between a, semi-proficient trader at reading charts in the model and consistency. And it's this emotional space where we're triggered with fear or greed or doubt. That is the game. And I've spent more time in that space working through those things than anything else. And I've found the biggest improvements once I've done that kind of thing. It's not the stuff people want to do, but it's the stuff that we have to do. All right, number 7, you can't quit your day job to trade at first. Now, you hear this, I'm sure, but how does this relate to what I'm talking about? Well, ultimately, why do so many people not make it at trading? It's because of this. Either they quit their day job, think they can trade, they run out of money, screw up because what I talked about earlier, right? They thought they could do it in 6 months and it's really going to take them 3 years. And then they got to crawl back to their job. They give up on day trading. They say it doesn't work and they never go back, right? Most people maybe attempt things once, fail, and don't pick themselves up and keep going. So they go back to their job, never make it at trading. Additionally, because you have to have an income stream while you're learning to trade, and because trading can take you, 2-3 years to really become proficient at it, if not more for some people, of course, you have to have that income stream to support yourself, which means obviously it takes a certain kind of person who's willing to work really hard. And I don't think nearly as many people are willing to put in the work that it's going to take, right? To give up fun on the weekends, to give up some of the pleasures, the dopamine, the spending, the trips, the luxuries in your life. And that's a person's choice, right? I've done all that, okay? I work relentlessly. I can share a little, I don't want to share too much about that because I think that's a whole nother video in terms of how I afforded to live and learn to day trade at the same time. But what I will say is that I had to do what it took. And that meant doing all kinds of things I didn't want to do. But in the end, it kept things going and it allowed me to trade full time. So that was kind of my flip on it, is instead of like working a day job and trading in the evenings or weekends kind of thing, I trade full time during the day, back test and all that other stuff. And I have other income sources that I'm working around that. And so I think that's an expectation that if we understand, like we need to just keep the income flowing, all of a sudden it removes the stress from trading. And if we don't have the expectation that I'm going to have trading pay for my bills in 6 months, the expectations are lower. And the moment we lower these expectations of ourselves, the funner it becomes, the less stressful it becomes, and the more likely we are to succeed. All right, number 8, people that don't have experience running a business are more likely to fail or struggle in this industry. And what I mean by this is ultimately, as a trader, you're self-employed. That means anything and everything from having the self-discipline to be able to show up and do what needs to be done, even if you're not getting a paycheck. It means understanding money in and money out. It means understanding business expenses versus profit. It means understanding spending money to make money and not having that bug you out. Now, in my experience, I've ran businesses before, so I understand all of these things. But one example being like when I ran Facebook ads for my last business, I could spend $5,000 on an ad and it wouldn't return anything. But I wasn't freaking out about it because I knew an ad soon would. I would, kill that ad. I would run another ad, spend $2 or $3 grand on it. And eventually I would have an ad, very much like trading. I would take a couple losses with some ads, but then I would have an ad that could return 50 grand and make up for all of those expenses with the other ads. And so I think that if a person wants to succeed at trading, they also need to have some understanding at running a business and being an entrepreneur and having that self-directed self-discipline that it takes to keep things going. All right, number 9, and this is one I'm hesitating on because I think it's not going to be what people want to hear, but it's real talk. Trading is not so profitable as it seems. There's more to this math. Now, let me explain. The reality is that when you see people post wins online, myself included, it is not the whole picture. You do not know how many losses they took before that trade. You do not know how many losses they will take after that trade. You do not know if that trade is a typical win or anything like that. So we see these people posting these, wins online, and I've seen it too, where it's like, 8, 10, 20 grand, right? And you're like, that's mind blowing. What could I do with 20 grand if I made that in a week? But when you paint the rest of the picture around it, those things that I just described, suddenly that $20,000 win, maybe it's a $2,000 profit week for that person, right? We have to account for our losses, our losing streaks, in addition to the home run trades and the big wins. And ultimately, we can look at this in terms of expected value on our trading system. For example, for me, I'm running 50K accounts copy traded, okay? And that means I'm going to risk about 200, 250 per trade. And that means with my system, I'm going to typically make on a full winner about 350, 375 per trade per account if it was a winner. But when you balance out the wins and the losses over a period of time, you get what's called expected value. And expected value for me is at this moment in these market conditions about $100, I think, a little less. And that means that for every trade I take, I'm on average going to make about $90 or $100 per trade per account. And I've taken 2 trades in the last 2 weeks because of these market conditions with FOMC and NFP being back to back. So how much have I made in my accounts this last 2 weeks? Like less than $100. Additionally, and this is not to discourage people, but we also got to remember that, and for those of us in the United States, there's, and us and other countries as well, there's heavy taxation. So you might see someone make $250,000 in a year, but just instantly cut that in half. And then well, they maybe made $125,000 in profit this year. So yes, trading is profitable and it can be scalable. but there's more to the math, and it's not as profitable as people think it is. But that does not mean it can't be very lucrative, and that does not mean that you can't stack businesses to go with it and make even more, period. All right, to wrap this video up, I want to throw in a 10th bonus one. Reasons why I think trading is not as profitable as it actually is, and why most people don't succeed at trading, is really not for everyone. Like, you actually have to love it. And I think so many people come into the trading space where they get lured in with the get-rich-quick scheme, very much like I did earlier on in my story that I told you about with the online course business. I actually ended up loving it. I loved teaching people. And for me here, it's similar in trading. I love trading. I just love candlesticks. I love the charts. I can't get enough of it. And that's an indication that it's for me. But if you're a person who you gotta begrudgingly, show up to the charts and watch the videos and work through these issues that I've talked about, then it's likely not for everyone, right? And that's, I think, unfortunately, something that most people don't necessarily recognize, is they don't balance like ideas, business ideas, money-making endeavors. They don't balance it with, do I love it? And I don't want to say that you have to love everything to do it, because that creates a perception that kind of an entitled perception of, well, I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it. I don't like my chores, I'm not going to do it, right? That's not how the world works. Instead, we want to have some kind of enjoyment in it, some kind of passion within something. Even if it's not the thing, for some people, the passion's business. Like, they love building systems and processes, and they love statistics and numbers and turning profits, so they actually don't even care what the business is. It could be something super boring and mundane, and they're fine with it. And that's cool for some people. But with trading, I think in particular, you have to love it, because you have to love the process before you're going to get the profits.